I get discouraged for sure, and I will quit fighting at some point. And that point is when the first shovel of dirt hits the top of my box 6 feet down.
Hello and welcome to COS Indiana Live as we bring you Roundtable. The Roundtable segment is presented here every fourth Monday of the month at 7 p.m. We'll be focusing on education and discussion of the topics and challenges we all face as we use the Constitution to save the Constitution. Join us now as we bring you COS Indiana Roundtable with our MC, John Ackerman.
Welcome to COS Indiana Live Roundtable. I'm your host, John Ackerman. We come to you on the fourth Monday night of every month, and this is the February 2024 edition. And it is broadcast number 233 of COS Indiana Live. Our topic tonight is the good, the bad, and the ugly of voting machines. And to help us dive into that, I want to start bringing our panel on now. And we'll see who comes up first. I hope it's Ken Kashuba, our State Communications Director. And Ken, I want you to talk to our audience about that QR code that they see up in the corner before we bring anybody else on. Can't hear you, Ken. I think you might be muted.
Is that better?
I can hear you a little bit.
What happened here? Let's see. QR code. I was on just a minute ago.
There you go. I hear you now.
Okay, something connected. There we go. Yeah, that QR code that's over your shoulder there, John, is our subscriber button. So with a smartphone, there you go. With that smartphone, you can go ahead and scan that code. And what it's going to do is it's going to bring you to a platform, which is currently being developed by COS Indiana Live for subscribers. And it's a full platform that gives you some inherent perks and bonuses, things like videos and PDF downloads, things that can help you not only understand a little bit more about Convention of States, but can give you some advanced programming and some other notes about COS Indiana Live. So you'll go directly to the platform. It'll ask you to join the group. And that's all you have to do is put in your name and email address, and you'll be part of our subscriber list.
Okay, that sounds great. So anybody who's watching tonight, especially if you're watching for the first time, that's the thing to do, and you'll really get connected to COS Indiana. Now, the rest of our panel consists of Mr. Dale Parrish, our virtual programming coordinator. Welcome back, Dale.
Hello, John. Good to see you.
Okay, and it's fun to see we have one or two special guests tonight. Let's find out.
Okay.
We're Mr. David Shelton. Good evening, David, and welcome.
Good evening. Thanks for having me on.
I understand you're in Knox County, way down south.
I am. I'm the county clerk down here in Knox County.
Okay, very good, and welcome.
Thank you.
Dale, do we have anyone else?
Well, we had another guest planned for this evening, but Susie's having some technical problems and is not going to be able to join us, apparently. Now, if she comes on later, I'll let you know, and we'll bring her in. But,
yeah, bring her right in. So,
despite the things that have been said about David, he's going to be the main guy tonight, I think.
And I'm glad he's here. So, David, I just met you actually tonight. I've heard your name, and I've heard some very good things about you. But I think you could do our viewers a favor if you would just give them a little thumbnail sketch about your background, what you know about voting machines. And I know that you're quite knowledgeable in this whole area. So just tell our viewers a little bit about who you are.
All right. So, like I said, I've been the county clerk here. I just started my 6th year. I've got basically 3 more years to go as county clerk. Prior to that, I've been a licensed private investigator for well over 20 years. Currently licensed in 2 states. At one time, I was licensed in 3 states, but let one drop off because I really enjoy being the county clerk. Really love the election part of the job itself. So, being a private investigator, it doesn't matter what kind of investigation I'm working on. It all boils down to some sort of fraud detection. And I've used that training, that experience in this line of work as well. The integrity of our elections are of utmost importance to me. I want fair, free, and accurate elections. I actually had a case of voter fraud here in Knox County in 2020. I had a gentleman attempt to vote 3 times. He was actually successful in voting twice in that election. I kind of took it personally when I found out about it. I documented everything. I even cited all the codes. I presented it to the local authorities, and they used my written report verbatim as the affidavit of probable cause. And about 1.5 years later, we had a felony conviction on that gentleman.
Don't tell us what party he was with, okay, David?
I'll give you 2 guesses.
No, we don't want to go there. Was he from Chicago, I might ask?
But we are a nonpartisan organization.
All right.
Well, David, you've got quite the resume there. And I mean, I have used a voting machine because I'm a voter, but I don't know very much about the ins and outs of it. So it's really good to have you here with us. We wanted to do a roundtable on the good and the bad of voting machines, and you came highly recommended. So I'm very glad that you're here. And Ken, you got a question for David to kick us off here?
Yeah, David, the differences between the voting machines when it comes down to verification, such as your optical scanned or your paper audited machines versus these other machines, which are either connected to the internet or companies that basically are building these machines, and some of them are outdated. Some of the software can be hacked. What can you tell us about the shape of voting machines nowadays in our country?
Well, in Indiana, not one single vendor, not one single voting machine itself is hooked up to the internet, to any kind of intranet network, nothing. They are completely standalone systems. Some people get confused that the e-poll books, electronic poll books, are connected to the internet. That is true, but the electronic poll books and the voting machines are not connected in any way whatsoever. Our machines are so secure, there's no Wi-Fi capability. I've seen these machines apart. There's nothing in them to transmit information other than a hard transfer through either a storage media device or a smart card, similar to your credit card that has a tally card. Like I use Microvote, which is a DRE. Over half the counties in Indiana use these DRE machines, and they're just highly accurate. When it comes time to program our voting machines, we have an option of doing it in-house, or we can pay the vendor to program the machines. I do my programming in-house. So what that process is I send my machine vendor, in my case Microvote, a list of all my local candidates. They create the ballot, okay? They don't even email that to me. They put that on a certified single-use thumb drive or jump drive, however you want to call it. I'm old school. I call it a thumb drive. And they hand deliver it to me. I have 2 computers that are solely used only for programming of the voting machines and tabulation. These 2 laptop computers are purchased from the vendor. They do not have Wi-Fi capability. They are never hooked to the internet. They don't have email. They don't have solitaire on them. They are standalone computers for our elections. So as long as these guidelines, these safety procedures are followed, there's absolutely no way to hack it because it is not connected to any network whatsoever.
Is that it's not nationwide that way, right?
It is not, to my understanding, but in Indiana it is. There's just no 2 ways around it. It's codified that these machines they're just not hooked up to the network, period, at all. And I know I've heard some people concerned about the e-poll books being connected to the internet. I don't really know what somebody could do with that information. I mean, the only information I can get to out of it is, whether or not somebody had already voted. Well, we already have something called poll watchers for that. So that information is readily available. In fact, both state parties request most of the county clerks to give them a data burst every, like at 9 a.m., noon, and 3 p.m. They want a blast of who all has voted in my particular county because they may have a get out the vote initiative in whatever area at that time. But the e-poll books themselves are not directly connected to the statewide voter registration system. In the lingo, it's called SVRS. It's actually connected to another system called ePulse. So there's no direct connection between the electronic poll books and the statewide voter registration system either. And that's just another barrier, another safety feature of our process here in Indiana.
David, what can you tell us about the big picture nationwide? What's the good and the bad of voting machines nationwide?
Well, the perception of voting machines is mostly negative around the country. You hear horror stories from other states. I can't attest to how they do their elections there. I can just be an advocate for Indiana because I'm satisfied that my system is secure. And believe me, if I had any question about it, I'd be yelling and screaming louder than anybody. And I'm not shy to raise a ruckus. I don't know if you can see it behind me. I have a collection of spoons because I'm known to stir things up if I'm not real happy with something. So I will be boisterous if I have a question about our system and processes.
Okay, Ken, I saw your hand up. Do you have a viewer comment?
Yeah, we have a question from a viewer, David. I'm not sure whether you can answer it or not, but this person is looking. Well, I'll put the question up. This person is looking to go back a little ways to ask a question about a 2020 election. And this viewer would like to hear more about the 2020 election, the 2-hour blackout, and the massive voting shift that occurred during that blackout. Person this hobby says that they've heard thousands of ballots were only had one POTUS vote in them. Do you know anything, or can you add anything that might help this viewer?
I am not aware of anything like that happening in Indiana. I mean, I too saw these alleged ballot dumps in the middle of the night in several swing states. It's just not possible with the system we have here in Indiana. Even if, mail-in voting is my biggest concern, my biggest question mark, simply because when we mail somebody a ballot, we don't know who's actually filling that ballot out and voting for the candidates. However, I will tell you that in Indiana, we do not mass mail ballots. It's a multi-step process. A voter must request an absentee ballot, and that in itself is not enough. We send out an application that has to be signed by the voter. The voter then has to return that signed application to us. That information, whenever I mail out an application, when I receive the application back, when I put the ballot package together and mail it out, and when I receive the completed ballot back to me, is all logged into the SVRS. I can go back several years and show you what day a ballot was mailed to you or when it was received back into my office. When this whole process begins, an individual unique barcode is associated to each individual voter. So when the ballot envelopes come back, we just simply scan that barcode, and that's how we know, we've received it back from that voter. We run daily computer reports indicating how many ballots have gone out and how many ballots have come back in. I then compare that with a physical hand count of my received ballots. And this is done in a bipartisan manner. I have a little kitchenette to the side of me over here that has 2 deadbolt locks on it. One's controlled by a Republican, one's controlled by a Democrat. And we'll do a physical hand count on our received ballots, and the numbers do match up. They better match up or we've got a problem. Now, every now and then we'll count them and it'll be off by 1 or 2, and that's because we put the ballots and the original applications in what we call a central count envelope. We don't seal that envelope, and sometimes the flap goes over the flap of another one. So we're doing a hand count real quick, and I come up with 39 when I should have 40. Well, I got to recount it. Simply a flap was over another envelope. But as far as big dumps in the middle of the night, it's just not possible. In fact, the opposite occurs here in Indiana, because a lot of times, especially when we send out the travel boards to a nursing home or assisted living facility, my bipartisan crew will go out there to take the votes of somebody who requested this service, and they look at the ballot and they simply don't vote for anybody. They don't recognize any names. So when it comes time on election day, I'm showing 100 ballots received, but I may only tally 99 votes because one of those ballots was absolutely blank.
I guess as kind of a follow up to that, David. I might just for our viewers help on that is from a person that's in your position. I think all of us would agree that blackout that occurred in 2020, we really didn't get any answers or any really good description as to what happened on that. As somebody in your position, if that was to happen in Indiana, how would you go about? I mean, obviously, would you have any better way of addressing that to the public? I guess is really what the viewer's looking for is, how addressed.
It's kind of hard for me to answer because I don't understand how that could happen to begin with. I mean, here in Indiana, Knox County in 2020, I had my election night results, my unofficial results, by like 8:30 that night. So there wasn't time for anything like that to go wrong. All of our machines have what we call a tally tape created as soon as the polls close. Let me back up a little bit before that. Before we even start the polls on election day, we print out what's called a zero tape. That indicates all the candidates' names, and it shows very clearly that no votes have been cast on that machine prior to the polls opening. At the end of the night at 6 p.m., we run the tally tapes. We also save that tally information on tally cards, again, which are just a smart card, a chip card. So we have multiple backups on our tallies before they even leave the polls. That information is then brought back to the clerk's office, and we tally everything up in those aforementioned computers earlier. So we already have paper backups of our tallies and the electronic versions of it. Plus, with the microvote DREs, there's another 4 or 5 locations within the machine itself where that historic data is stored in case you lost a card. We could recreate the tally card, but we still have the paper backup. There's many fail safes that the people just don't realize are actually there.
This is all very fascinating stuff. We appreciate it. And for the viewers' information, if you didn't already know, one viewer already tipped you off. You can make a comment or ask a question if you're watching live on either Facebook or YouTube. Just click in the comment box and put it up there. And Ken is keeping an eye on that, and he's going to bring as many relevant comments and questions to the roundtable as he can. Ken, do you have another one before we move on?
Seems like a popular topic tonight, John. We do have one other one, and I think to a certain degree, David, you've answered it kind of. So I'll go ahead and bring it up anyway. This is from our state director, so I have to get it in there. He wants to know, why did we change from paper ballots to machines?
In my opinion, accuracy and speed. This last year was a municipal election cycle. A lot of communities, I had 3 communities, small towns in my county, and I had 4 other surrounding counties need to have what's called a town convention. What a town convention is, it's a party function. So most small towns have a 3-member town board, then you have a clerk treasurer. If there were more than 3 Republicans sign up for the town board race, you'd have to hold what's called a town convention. Now, since these are party functions, we don't have access to the county's voting machines, so we do the traditional paper ballots with a ballot box. I helped this one town convention this last August. We had 100 people show up for the town convention, 5 candidates running for the 3 town board positions. Party rules dictate that they appoint 2 residents of the town to be tellers who actually count the ballots. And bless their heart, these 2 ladies counted these 100 ballots 3 times and could not come up with the same number between them after 3 complete counts. It was bad. And that was just for one race. I don't know how they did it back in the day where you have multiple races and trying to keep a tally of who got what vote. I mean, any system that involves humans is prone to errors, and that's just the big question mark. I just don't know how to do that. I've seen my machines in action. I had a recount in one of my elections this last fall, a city council race here in Vincennes, and most clerks are hesitant. They don't want to deal with a recount. What if it's wrong? Well, I welcome the experience because I never had one before. And I'm happy to say that our election night reporting was confirmed to the vote with the recount that year. So I am just totally sold on our voting machines we have here in Indiana. But, I will issue the disclaimer. I don't know how they do it in other states. I've seen things, but I have not personally experienced things in other states.
Okay, well, our 2 viewer questions have moved us into the next section here, and Dale has a question about how things are going in Indiana.
Yeah, I think, David, I think you've answered probably some of the questions here about issues that we have here in Indiana. But my question basically, what are some of the issues? Are there some other voting machine issues that you haven't touched on yet here in Indiana?
I wouldn't call them so much issues with the machines or the technology. It's more of the human factor, training of the poll workers. I have training. I hold off until the Sunday before Election Day in hopes that all my information I'm trying to spoon feed them retains in their noggins. Doesn't always happen. We have the issue of experienced poll workers thinking they know everything. They're not aware that our elections are living, breathing things. They're always evolving. I mean, things change every single year. We have a lot of simple connection issues. They don't have a power cord plugged in all the way, or they bumped it. It came out.
Really?
It seems like every election I'm spending the first hour and a half, myself and my mechanics are going all over the countryside, just plugging in machines to make sure they're plugged in all the way.
How many polls? How many polls do you have in your area?
So in 2021, Knox County converted to a vote center system. So we went from 32 precincts with 28 unique voting locations down to 13 overall in the county.
Do you get enough volunteers to cover those
Yes, we staff ours basically the bare minimum. You have to have your inspector, which is dictated by the top vote getter for Secretary of State in your county. So in my county, the Republican candidate received the most votes. So we have a Republican inspector, and then we have a Republican and Democrat judge and a Republican and Democrat poll clerk. So I staff them with 5 people at every location. Now, this election may be a little bit different. I may have an extra set of bipartisan poll workers there, just in case we have a high turnout on election days.
Yeah. Now, this is not a voting machine issue that I've heard about necessarily, but the mailing list, the multiple people using the same address. Do you run into that kind of thing with your absentee ballots? And
I have not since I've been clerk. There's always question marks. We have Vincent's University here, and several years ago they had, in 2008, the Democrats had a great big get out the vote initiative, and they bust NVU students to the polling locations back in 2008. And, then you had a lot of people the same address. I don't have that problem here in Knox County. But I'm always keeping my eye out. Something doesn't look quite right, I'll look into it. I hear rumors. I'm a border county here. Illinois is just across the river from me, and I hear rumors. Well, this person really lives in Illinois, but they're registered to vote over here. Well, I've established a relationship with county clerks even across the state line, and I'll call them. I said, hey, did this person vote in your election last year? And unfortunately, it's not illegal to be registered in more than one state at a time. It's only illegal if you vote in more than one election at a time.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I'm ever vigilant. I am looking and trying to make sure that our elections are as safe and secure as they possibly can here.
But okay, do you cover absentee ballots though? That's
yes,
part
I
of
do.
your. Okay, is that a growing number of ballots?
Well, it really grew in 2020 with the pandemic. We saw a 5 to 10-fold amount of absentee ballots.
Did you?
22 midterm, and then the municipals last year, they're getting back down into the normal manageable rates. I think people are getting used to wanting to come back and vote in person. But in Indiana, we have 13 or 14 permissible reasons to request an absentee ballot. There's only one that a county clerk can actually verify, and that's whether or not a voter is over the age of 65. Everything else is simply on the honor system.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. There's no signature verification or anything?
Well, there is signature verification, but I was talking about the reason to ask for an absentee ballot. We don't have no fault absentee ballot applications or absentee ballots here in Indiana. But yes, there is signature verification. I think I mentioned earlier that the original application is stored with the ballot. When we receive the ballot back, it has a signature spot on that as well. And at that time, we compare the signature from the application to the actual ballot. And then when it comes to election day, when my team start opening up the ballots and removing the ballots from the ballot envelopes, those signatures are again compared at that point in time.
Okay. So you feel pretty confident that you're set for this next election in Knox County?
I feel like I am. I'm trying to be prepared for everything. I'm updating my emergency preparedness plan. I have moved a couple locations where they have backup generators on site. I have got with my local EMA director. I know where portable backup generators are. I know where I'll just, deploy them if needed. I mean, let's face it, if we have a countywide power outage, people can be worried about other things other than voting, but I still want to be prepared. When you're a vote center county, you're required to have one vote center for every 10,000 registered voters. I mean, with those numbers, I only have to have 3 vote centers in my entire county, but I'm planning on having 6 or 7 locations running no matter what happens. Tornadoes, floods, zombie apocalypse, or a meteor shower, we're going to be able to vote in Knox County on election day.
All right.
Okay, Ken, what do you have?
Well, we got another question from the viewer who had a question earlier, and I don't know. I'm pretty sure, David, you probably aren't able to speak for other states, but I'm going to combine that with a question I have too, so we kind of give you something to chew on there.
Okay.
The question he has is basically, why do some states not require voter ID like Indiana does? And my question added to that is, how often do we clean our mailing list or our registration lists? And why aren't we better at cleaning our list so that these people that have been dead for 50 years aren't getting ballots or mailings to them and so on and so forth?
Okay, so as far as the states with voter ID, that's a matter for their own individual state legislatures to address. There's some very vocal groups out there that want to just totally open our elections up to everybody, and some of these states are simply fearful of litigation. They don't want to deal with it, so they don't approach those ideas. As far as our voter rolls, I'll be the first to admit our voter rolls are bloated. They really are, but we're really restricted on what we can do by federal laws, National Voter Registration Acts and such like that really hamper us from cleaning our voter rolls. I mean, what we can do right now, every odd number year, the Indiana Election Division mails out little postcards. You probably received them last year. That's called voter list maintenance, or VLM, and it's a 2-card process. What happens is they mail a card to every registered voter based upon their voter registration information. What is supposed to happen if that voter no longer lives there, whoever receives it at that address is supposed to mark on there, does not live here anymore, moved, whatever the case may be, and returns it to the state. However, what happens is a lot of voters, they move out of home from mommy and daddy, or, for whatever reason, change their residence, but somebody is still there that knows them, or they simply just don't return the card. So we can only act upon it if 2 cards are mailed to them and both cards are returned to the state election division. And then, and only then, can we as the county election administrators act upon it. And we can't just cancel them right there. So if a voter had an active status and 2 of their cards in one of those years was returned to the election division, I can only move them from active to an inactive status. Now, what inactive status, hold on a second here. What an inactive status means is simply they just haven't voted for a while, or their address is in question, but they're still allowed to vote. It's only when you're canceled that's when you have to re-register to be able to participate in our election process. So again, if they're in an inactive status already and 2 cards go out and come back to the election division, then we can move them to a canceled status. I wish it was more incumbent upon the voter. I wish it was more, I'm drawing a blank for the word I'm saying. I wish a card would go out to the voter where the voter actually has to sign her name and says, yes, I still live here. It has to be more proactive. but there's federal laws that prevent that. So I don't know how long it's going to take to change some of these federal laws. A very long time, I'm afraid, because a lot of these have been on the books since back in the Clinton administration, and I just don't see them changing anytime soon.
So John, to me, that sounds a little bit like it fits right in with our Convention of States federal overreach to me.
Oh man, yeah, I hadn't made that connection in my mind. Thank you, Ken. Okay, Dale, were you done with your questions?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Oh, okay, well, we're about halfway through the hour here, so we're going to take a little break now and see a little video by our own Gary Harbaugh concerning the debt avalanche, and we'll be right back after that.
All right.
Hi, it's Gary. I'm a volunteer with the Convention States Project here in Indiana. I want to talk a little bit about the national debt. This is a horrible problem. One of the reasons we need a Convention of States. I'm going to talk, rather than how long it takes to add $1 trillion, I want to talk about how long it has taken to add 50% to the national debt. Now, a 50% increase, that's a pretty big increase. You'd think that might take a long time. That's like going from $2 trillion to $3 trillion, which we did between 1985 or 1986, actually, and 1990. Took about 50 months, that case. And that was fairly rapid. And that's been pretty close to the average overall in the last 20 years. And I'm going to go back to the period between 2003 and 2008 for the first 50% increase we're going to look at. That was an increase from roughly $6.5 trillion to $10 trillion. And that took 5.5 years for that 50% increase. The next 50% increase happened much more quickly. It happened between 2008 and 2011. And you may recall that was during the great financial crisis. Government kind of went crazy spending money. And it took only 3 years for a 50% increase from 10 trillion to 15 trillion. The next increase of 50% was really a slowdown in terms of pace of the increase. It took about 8 years. That was the tail end of the Obama administration and most of the Trump administration. And one of the things about this, that if you really look back through history, the spending has gone on almost irrespective of which party was in control. And so that's why elections can't fix this, because it doesn't matter which party's in control. But in the 8 years between 2011 and 2019, the national debt increased from about 15 trillion to about $23 trillion. So that was the end of 2019. The increase in 50%, the next one took just 4 years between the beginning of 2020 and the beginning of 2024. That 50% increase took the national debt from 23 trillion to 34 trillion, about where it stands today. And so it's rapidly grown. And right now, the projections are that if you go out and look on the web, it'll tell you, hey, the national debt's likely to reach $50 trillion in just 8 years. My friends, don't you believe it? I project that the national debt will grow by another 50% to about $51 trillion in just 4 years. Part of that is because of higher interest rates. Higher interest rates bake into the cake, higher spending. We got $1 trillion a year now it costs just to pay the interest on the debt, and the interest rates are rising. So that's not going to get any better. We have a new speaker. Not much has changed. Speaker Johnson agreed to a continuing resolution, which really just continues spending at the prior level, which is largely a level that was negotiated between Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. So come March, we're going to find out whether we're going to shut the government down or whether we're going to get real spending reforms with the passage of 13 spending bills, one for each department of government, whereby government spending can be lowered somewhat, at least in some departments. It's a big mess. It's a huge problem for the United States. The growing debt is passing on our problem to the next generation. It's not fair. It's not moral. It's something that something has to be done. which is one reason why we need a convention of the states to put limits on federal spending. We'll see what happens.
Well, that was a frightening eye-opener, Gary. Ken, what do you have?
Just a follow up to what we were talking about with voter rolls. Ryan Free has a comment that I think is interesting. He said Judicial Watch sued Indiana and Ohio 4 years ago to clean up voter rolls. He wants to know, is the issue with SOS? And I admit I'm not sure what SOS is.
No, I believe the issue is with the federal guidelines that we have to adhere to right now. We do a lot, but there is some, areas that we could help with new legislation in Indiana. For example, if somebody, registers to vote in another county, I receive them in the mail every so often. I'll get something from the state of Tennessee. Hey, John Smith just moved down here to Tennessee. Go ahead and cancel his registration. Even though that's an official form from the state of Tennessee, I can't act upon that. I can only send his prescribed form to that voter in Tennessee and asking him to cancel his own voter registration. We do receive daily updates in our SCRS hopper that's connected to the health department from residents who've passed away here in Indiana. That's a daily occurrence. And then about once a month, I get a report from the Indiana Department of Health identifying voters from my county who died while outside of Indiana. So we do have a lot of maintenance going on. It's just, is it enough? Well, it's all that we can do per federal guidelines right now.
Thanks for that, David. And Ryan, thank you for that question. And, I just want to take this opportunity to point out the importance of our legislators keeping up on what the current needs are. And I think David has just put his finger on something. And then, of course, the bigger issue is, what Convention of States is all about. Federal overreach, tying the hands of secretaries of state, and in David's case, the clerk of Knox County, unable to clean up the voter rolls as should be done because of federal overreach. And so, a little plug for COS here. If you're a viewer and you haven't yet signed the petition, you need to go to conventionofstates.com and add your name to the, what is it? We over 60,000 supporters now in the state, Dale?
Yeah, we're close to 70,000 right now.
No way. I must have been asleep. Okay, we're close to 70,000 people who are supporting this. So I want to move on to the next item. And I'm not sure, David, if you can address it, because things are going so well in your county. And our other guest, who was unable to connect tonight because of technical issues, maybe had some more insight into this, but maybe you can address it. Are there any specifics, any problems that you've been able to document in Indiana, or you're aware of have been documented in Indiana, David?
So there have been a few issues with our voting process here in Indiana. One of them is a lot of misinformation. We have some groups that are advocating for paper ballots and the abolition of voting machines and vote centers and everything else like that. And one of their main talking points is people are receiving ballots in the mail unsolicited. They never have one of these ballots to show anybody. What's happening is both parties, Republican and Democrats, will mail out ballot applications, and people don't know the difference. They're just simply applications. I have that happen every year in my county. Somebody's calling me mad that they've received a ballot. I'm saying, well, here's my cell phone. Take a picture of it and send it to me, please. And every single time, it's just simply a ballot application that the Republicans or Democrats mailed out to them. So that's just kind of a misconception, but it's something that we have to deal with and try to educate the voters. But I don't like it. There's not a single county clerk that does like these mass mailed out applications. But
is this an app? Are you talking, David? Excuse me. Is this an application for a absentee ballot? Is that?
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Yes.
Okay. All right. Huh.
So
I've seen those. Yes, we've received those. Yes.
Yep, and not a clerk in the state likes them. However, Nobody's willing to do anything, because if the Republicans propose doing away with it, the Democrats would be screaming voter suppression, and vice versa. If the Democrats wanted that, the Republicans would be saying the same thing. The political parties, they apparently see some sort of return on investment for this process. I logged at this last municipal election. I'm going to make up numbers. I don't remember my exact numbers, but this is a good approximation. I had 35 complaints about these applications, and I had 5 of them actually filled out and returned by the voters. So the complaints far outweighed the return on investment for these mass mailed out ballot applications, at least in my county.
That's interesting to hear that. Wow. Okay, let's move on. Dale, you have the next question.
Yeah, well, I think again, David's already touched on this, I think, but what needs to be done? Some of these problems that you've identified here in Indiana, what do you think needs to be done to correct those?
Well, just simply do the best job you can with voter education. One of the biggest dangers to our election process, in my opinion, is simply voter apathy. Municipal elections, we see 20% turnout, even on presidential. We're hovering
What kind
around
of turnout?
50%.
What kind of turnout do you see in your county?
I'm seeing a little bit higher. Since I just converted to vote centers a couple of years ago, I don't know if it's a novelty of the thing. I'm running about 5 percentage points higher than the state average on my elections right now.
I don't know, what is the state average?
Well, it depends on what the election is. So a municipal primary, you're averaging 10% turnout. A
That's
municipal
terrible.
November election, 20 to 25. Midterms, 40 to 45%. And presidentials in November, 50 to 60%. That's what I'm going to anticipate for this year.
Really?
But within Indiana, the 28 days of early voting opportunities, your 14 permissible reasons to ask for an absentee ballot, vote centers. The only reason somebody doesn't vote in this day and age is simply because they don't want to. The opportunity is there for each and every registered voter to vote.
Are you in favor of early voting?
I am. I don't know if the entire basically month long is necessary. I know as a clerk, it'd be nice to cut that down to a couple weeks. I historically always see the first week of early voting, and most of the time the second week of early voting, not really worth the effort considering what I'm paying my poll workers. I mean, I love numbers. So the first week I'm already doing the math. Well, I paid my poll workers X amount of dollars, and we had X amount of votes, and this is costing the county $85 per vote, when in a perfect world on election day, you're looking at $1 or $2 per vote. So I'm always looking at the numbers. I try to be cost effective and yet, provide the services that are required.
What do you do? Do you do anything specifically in the area of education? You talked about voter education. Do you do anything specific, or do you leave that up to the school system?
I have a good relationship with my local media, so I'm never shy to share with them. I have a pretty good social media presence here in my community. I do short videos every election. I am scheduled coming up in March to go to all of my area high schools. Not only am I doing that to educate the students, but in Indiana, we have a program called Hoosier Hall Pass, where students even as young as 16 can be paid poll workers. So I'm trying to recruit poll workers. I'm talking to the government.
Yeah, that's good.
The government teachers to point out their top students, to recruit them, because if they like it, they'll stick with it. The average age of our poll worker in Indiana is up there. Prior to the pandemic, I think the average age was 79. And I'm sorry, but sometimes they have a little bit of difficulty adapting to the newer technology.
Now, wait a minute. Wait. What you're saying about 79-year-olds here?
Well, my mom's 79, so maybe I got a little bit too comfortable saying
your
that
mother's
age,
79, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm 79. Holy smoke.
That's a good number to be. Ken, what do you have?
A pretty good question here again coming up. Are the results of early voting released before the final election day?
Early voting totals are not tabulated until election day. It is illegal for us to tabulate anything prior to election day. Now, I will tabulate my early voting results in the afternoon of election day. So when we tabulate those on our tabulation computers, I then have to take another brand new certified thumb drive and upload that tabulated results to another thumb drive. Then I have to walk across the room to a computer that's actually hooked up to the internet, and I have it ready to go. 6:01 p.m. Boom! My early voting results are posted to my county website. But as far as tabulation beforehand, no. I can estimate voter turnout, but I have no idea how anybody votes or any tallies or totals prior to 6 p.m.
Okay, Ken.
It's a
I
hot
keep
topic.
seeing your hand.
All right, now this question is something that was in my mind, and I'm going to kind of couple with it as well. I don't know how these things. I think these viewers are reading my mind tonight, but a viewer wants to know, and I want to kind of couple this with a thought that I don't think really has a chance of happening. But person wants to know, voting in person on election day, if it matters, you will do it. And my piggyback to that is, outside of people with disabilities, the military, people that necessarily need to vote early, outside of that, wouldn't it be grand to be able to have a national one voting day, and it's a holiday. They make it a national holiday. So if you're home on a national holiday and you want to vote, you could vote.
I'd be 100% for that. Absolutely. Oh,
absolutely. Happening? Would you put a percentage on that?
Oh, how many people would show up?
Whether we could get it done.
That may be doable with a concerted effort. Unfortunately, some people they can't find the motivation to do the right thing no matter what. Personally, I wouldn't be opposed to offering some sort of incentive. If you wanted to get paid as a paid holiday, simply show your I voted sticker. We're not going to give you any kind of receipt or anything like that, but that couldn't be a governmental function to offer any kind of enticements to vote. But I like the idea just to try to get more people to vote, because when you hold an election, all the hard work, it's more than just an election day. This is a year-round process with voter registration, the prep work, and everything. And when I hold an election and only 25% of the people show up to vote, it's like having a birthday party and nobody's showing up for it.
Mm. Yeah. Dale, were you done with your questions?
I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, well, because of the time, I want to move on to closing here. And I want to thank David you've spent 47 minutes online with us here. And thank you for your time and your knowledge and expertise. We really do appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It's only seemed like it's been about 5 minutes to me so far.
Well, when you're doing something that you enjoy, time really flies. Well, viewers, this brings us to the end of this month's roundtable. And before we close it out, I want to give you our email address. If you have any questions at all about Convention of States, you can email them to us at this address, raiseyourvoicecos@gmail.com. raiseyourvoicecos@gmail.com. And now here's a conversation that I had a few months back with our state director, Dale Tipton, and it's called Indiana Needs You. State director, talk to the audience about how they can become involved in Convention of States.
You bet. There's an effort that we've had ongoing for a while where we're communicating through links that deal with recruitment. As an organization, we have a lot of positions to fill, and positions have to be filled by volunteers. And if we're going to become citizen activists, which we really have to do to make a change in our government, people need to take positive steps to do things so that we can turn this ship of government around. And in Indiana, for example, we have 100 House districts, and we appoint what we call a district captain in each one of those districts. And in this particular link, this is a direct appeal for people to volunteer to become district captains, whereby they would be tasked with being the liaison between the people within that district and their elected representatives, their senator and their local representative. And then also they are responsible for spreading the word about Convention of States through various ideas, such as town halls or parade events or any kind of thing like that, where we can, mix in with the public, block walking, any number of things. And this allows direct involvement at a fairly high level where you're really your own manager and you will have all the assistance that you need, but the tools are presented there for you so that you can become an advocate for Convention of States and make a difference. And the other thing that's pointed out here, more towards the top of the page, is we are a past state. In February of 2016, Indiana signed the resolution. So as we try to recruit people, oftentimes we hear, well, you guys passed the resolution. It's been done a long time ago. What else is there to do? And there's a list here on this page of all of the different things, or many of the different things that we can do as individuals to support both the ongoing effort in Indiana and then how we can also assist neighboring states that maybe haven't passed the resolution yet. And so this is kind of the latest thing we've got. And this is ultimately the easiest thing we've done because the application is literally at the bottom of the page that you can fill out to become a district captain. So it's a one-click deal and you're there. And we're hoping some people will sign up to join the COS revolution.
Okay, I want to invite you to tune in next Monday, March the 4th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time for our next COS Indiana Live, which will feature the co-directors of COS Minnesota. Can you say Minnesota? They will be here next Monday night. That's March the 4th. And that night, we will also feature a COS Indiana Surge Day video, which I understand is quite good, and I can't wait to see it. And our next roundtable will be on the 4th Monday of March. That will be March the 25th at 7 p.m. Eastern. And to close us out, here's a message from our national COS president, Mark Meckler. It's called The Day I'll Quit Fighting.
I struggle to empathize with people who would give up. It doesn't make sense to me. Sam Adams said, for those of you who prefer safety and security over liberty, over the animating fight for liberty, I hope that you enjoy licking the hands that feed you. May your chains rest lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that you are our countrymen. Like, do you understand that your kids and you are sentencing your kids and your grandkids and your friends' kids and your neighbors' kids to a lifetime of slavery and servitude, literally, of fear, of living in the darkness, but never, ever, never, never, never give up. George Washington lost the majority of his battles that he fought in the American Revolution. If you read his writings, if you read the letters where he was writing to Congress asking for money and troops, he was saying, we're losing. I don't have the troops I need. I don't have the supplies I need. Did he quit? What about the guys on the beach at Normandy? Like, what did they do? Did they just quit? Oh, there's, a lot of guys are dying around me. It's really bad. It looks really dismal. Those cliffs are huge. Machine gun fire raining down on us. And it's too hard. We should just quit. Thank God those people didn't quit. If they had, where would we be? I get discouraged, for sure. And I will quit fighting at some point. And that point is when the first shovel of dirt hits the top of my box 6 feet down.